Greetings, students, and welcome to our discussion about Speech 4 and learning about persuasive speaking. So at this point, you have done two informative speeches, you've done the midterm, and so we are done with that framework that we were using, that structure. And so what we're going to be doing now is a little bit different, and so we're going to spend a lot of time. This video is longer than many of them have been because I need to talk through each part of what we need to do in the speech. So let's get to it, okay? Now, in terms of overview for this speech, you're going to talk about a problem, and you've got to just orient yourself into that frame of thinking, okay? Problem, problem, problem. That is what we're working with here. A problem that you want us to help you solve, okay? So the problem has to be something that you encounter in your daily life. That is what the sort of topic requirement is for speech 4. So here's some examples of problems that you might encounter, all right? The MTA keeps raising the fare, and indeed they do. Perhaps in your building where you're living, your super doesn't fix things on time. The NYPD racial profiles people in your neighborhood. I mean, whatever it is, some problem that you experience in your daily life, okay? So the deal is this: you've got to be able to talk about the problem. You're going to propose a solution to that problem, and then you've got to be able to visualize the future and talk about what it's going to be like if we take your advice or if we fail to take your advice. And that's the main structure for what we're going to be doing in our persuasive speeches, using a structure that is called Monroe's motivated sequence. And indeed, that was mentioned very briefly in the chapter on persuasive speaking. So what's new? Instead of talking about main point 1, main point 2, main point 3, like there are 3 topics, 3 sort of, or maybe 3 subsets of information, 3 categories of information that fit into one topic. Here, we're going to be talking about problem, which is establish the need. And so that's your whole main point 1 is going to be all about the problem and nothing else. Main point 2 is now going to be called satisfy the need. And so that's going to be all about the solution. So we talk about the problem in point 1, we talk about the solution in point 2, and then in point 3, we visualize the future. And so I'm going to go through all of those bits and break them down. But to get started, Monroe's motivated sequence is named after a guy named Monroe, okay, Alan Monroe. He was a Purdue University professor, and he used the psychology of persuasion to develop an outline for making speeches that would deliver results. And it's known as the Monroe's motivated sequence. If you went onto YouTube and you searched for Monroe's motivated sequence, you're going to find 2 different kinds of videos. You're going to find people doing what I'm doing right now, a PowerPoint and narrating you through like what the different steps are from Monroe's motivated sequence. So if you need additional help, you can look there. Also, I have a handout that you can look at, and that's going to be in the next section of this module, if that's helpful. But also there'll be lots of sample videos of people giving persuasive videos. They're not all great and they're not all perfect and they don't all follow exactly what we need to do, but they're pretty close. It's going to clearly be a problem and clearly be presenting a solution and persuading people to help solve the problem, okay? Well used and time-proven method to organize presentations for maximum impact. The goal is to show a clear problem and propose a solution that will encourage us to take action. And taking action is a really important part of what it is that we're going to do. So it's not just like, hey, there's this problem and I propose this solution. What exactly do you want us to do right now in order to start solving that problem? Taking action, call to action. It's the end of the speech, very important. Okay, I've already told you that it needs to be a problem that you encounter in your everyday life, so we're good to go. Looking at the structure for the speech, so it looks in some ways similar to what we did before, okay? There's still introduction, main point, blah, blah, blah. But all of the things that are in red are all the parts that are new. So we're starting out with an attention getter, nothing new there, claim, credibility. We're gonna talk about all of that now. So let's see. In what's new in the introduction. So first of all, we start with an attention getter, no different from what we did before, but we're going to have this thing called a claim, which is where you tell us what you're persuading us to do. And you'll identify both the problem and the solution in one sentence. Okay, so that's a little tricky. Problem and solution in one sentence. So here's an example, and you'll see there's a sample speech 4 outline, and all of these samples I'm using right now in this blue section here come from that sample outline. Cyberbullying has become a huge problem over the years. problem, especially within teens, and they need to be taught. Solution, what we're going to do about it. They need to be taught more about the consequences of cyberbullying. So a student of mine wrote this in the past. I didn't make it up. So if it's unclear in any way, blame the student. All right. So then main point one, establish the need. What's the problem you want us to fix? At a certain point in main point one, you're going to address something called consequences of inaction, and I'll just show you how that's happening. In main point one, we used to have like that you would state the main point and then you'd explain it, give an example, and tell a story. In main point one, you do not tell a story or give an example. Instead, you're doing this consequences of inaction thing, so that's new. The other main points, it will still be explain it and then give an example or tell a story, but not in main point one, not when you're talking about the problem. Okay, because you really want to emphasize that it's a problem, and telling a story about it is going to get us a little off track. You can use that for your attention getter if you want to do that. All right, so here, where are we? I'm here. Okay, so consequences of inaction, what's going to happen if we fail to act? Okay, main point two, satisfy the need. What solution do you propose? Pretty clear. And then visualize the future. What will the future be like if we take your advice, if we fail to take your advice, or both? So let's look at all of those a little more closely, okay? Or we will in a moment, but first, there's two more parts that are new. So there's something called a counterclaim, which you might have learned about persuasive speaking, especially if you were a student in New York in an English class and you had to write a persuasive essay at some point, perhaps in preparation for the Regents exam. So sometimes in persuasive writing, we ask people to include a counterclaim, which is counter meaning opposite, okay? So what's an opposite view on your topic? Some people might think differently than me, and that's a turn against, and then we have a turn back, which is a defeat. So why is that view wrong? Why is your view better? Okay, and then the last thing is in the conclusion. We used to have a power punch. We don't have that anymore. Now instead we have a call to action. What do you want us to do right now to begin taking action to solve this problem? Give us 2 or 3 options so we can decide what is best for us and what can you do right now to help us achieve that. All right, now of course this is all new and might be complicated. So as I said, I'm going to go through each piece of this individually and talk about them in depth and give examples. Okay? So here we go. First step, getting attention. Same as we've done before. Get the attention of your audience. Use storytelling, humor, shocking statistic, rhetorical question. This should sound familiar because we've been doing it for a while, okay? And the list that we had for options for doing an attention getter are the same as what we did before. So if you've been doing attention getters and doing them well, great, you know what to do, keep doing it. For this speech, the next one, and the final. If you're not sure about it or you feel unclear, go back and look at the chapter on the introduction and conclusion or look at the handout. And the list is here again, always the same, what we do for attention getters. Claim, however, is new. So what are you persuading us to do? We need to preview our main idea, or we used to preview our main ideas, but we're not doing that anymore. And now you're just telling us the problem and solution and put it in one brief sentence. So we must put an end to the obesity epidemic, okay? And we want to hear like the problem and the solution. So the obesity epidemic is the problem, putting an end to it is the solution. Does that make sense? The last thing, of course, in the introduction is credibility, same as what we did before. I know about this topic because nothing new there. All right, so here's a sample. How many of you guys have kids or younger siblings, younger cousins, or even anyone younger than you who may look up to you? Question, attention getter, fine. Cyberbullying has become a huge problem over the years, especially within teens, and they need to be taught more about the consequences of cyberbullying. Fine, problem and solution. Credibility. I know about this topic because I did research for this project, but I first learned about it because of a cyberbullying awareness presentation at my middle school. Some of you may have heard of one of the most famous cases involving a girl who killed herself due to cyberbullying. Her name was Megan Meyer. I actually met her mother, Tina Meyer, who gave the presentation at my school. Okay, so that's an example, and that is showing credibility. Perfectly fine. Now, main point one. We've got to establish the need, so tell about the problem, I'm calling this step 2 because the handout that's about Monroe's motivated sequence says that there are 5 steps to the sequence. And so this is the second step, even though it's main point 1. Don't be confused. The first step was getting attention. The second step is establishing the need. So convince your audience that there's a problem. This set of statements must help the audience realize that what's happening right now isn't good and it needs to change. So you'll identify the problem in one sentence. That's like stating the problem, okay? Include signal words so we know where we are in the speech. So first, I'm going to tell you about why obesity is a problem, okay? The second thing is to explain it. So give some detail, all right? Consider using statistics to back up your statements, but it's not required. Just explain it, okay? Then the third thing in main point 1 is to talk about the consequences of an action. So what's going to happen if we don't fix this problem? And then you'll repeat the problem in one sentence with signal words that tell us where we are in the speech. So that was a little bit about why obesity is a problem. And then you go on to main point 2. Now I'm going to talk about what we should do about obesity, okay? If that was what your topic was. So here, explain the problem. Did I miss something? This is talking about cyberbullying, remember? So first we'd state it, all right, so cyberbullying is a big problem, period. Do not talk about how we need to stop cyberbullying. That's solution, that's main point 2. Main point 1, only the problem, okay? It's not merely just a joke to tease someone. Cyberbullying is the use of the internet, smartphones, or other electronic communication devices to spread harmful or embarrassing information about another person. This information can be in the form of texts, photos, or videos. So there's more detail here about the problem. And when you look at the sample outline, you'll see it there. I'm not going to read the whole thing because this is going to take forever. All right, then we have to deal with consequences of inaction. What's going to happen if we don't do something about this problem? The problem is cyberbullying. What's going to happen if we don't stop cyberbullying? Many teens shrug off cyberbullying as merely annoying or even funny, even though it may have serious consequences. Targets of cyberbullying can experience emotional distress, including anger, frustration, embarrassment, sadness, fear, and depression. It may interfere with their ability to perform schoolwork. In some cases, it may cause them to change schools. It has also been linked to delinquency, violence, substance abuse, possessions of weapons on school grounds, and suicide. Okay, so you're just hammering home why this is a problem and why we have to change it. Consequences of inaction. If we don't do anything, all this stuff is going to keep going on. Got it? Then you repeat it. So now we see cyberbullying is an actual problem with devastating consequences. Fine, main point 1. Going on to main point 2, satisfy the need. What's the solution? So you're going to introduce your solution, how you will solve the problem that your audience is ready to address. This is the main part of your presentation. It will vary significantly depending on your purpose. So sometimes it's going to be very direct, like a list of things that we should do. Sometimes it's going to be more general. It just depends on what you're talking about, and that's okay. First, of course, you'll identify the solution, you'll explain it, you'll give an example or tell a story, and you'll repeat it, okay? Now, identify the solution. So this is cyberbullying. Let's be clear, there needs to be more awareness about cyberbullying. So that's sort of general awareness about cyberbullying, and that's fine. Explain it. Kids will do what they see others do. Mostly all kids have access to the internet, whether it's at home or at school or from another friend's phone or computer. It's up to us to teach those younger than us how to use it responsibly. The student went on to give information from a source. You do not have to do this for speech 4. Speech 4 does not need to include research from the library or anywhere else. You can just talk about a problem and solution you already know about. Speech 5 will use information from the library. This student was ambitious, okay, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just remember the speech is short. It's only 3 to 5 minutes. So if you start using a lot of research, you're going to run out of time. Okay, give an example. When I was in middle school, a mother of a victim of cyberbullying visited my high school. She already mentioned that in her credibility, remember? She is the mother of the famous case I mentioned earlier, soon after opening an account on MySpace, okay, a long time ago. And she'll go on and give the rest of the information about that. So the solution, we've got to do something about this. Tell us where we are. So now we see how important it is to speak to those younger than us, how to use the internet responsibly, and how much of an impact it can actually make on a teenager like it did to me. So this is raising awareness. That was how it was phrased. It's better to be consistent, but it doesn't matter as much. These speeches are a little looser than what we did for the informative speech. So it's okay if you don't use the exact same phrasing. All right, main point 3, home stretch. Visualize the future. Your goal is to motivate the audience to agree with you and adopt similar behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs. Help them to see what your results could be if they act the way you want them to. You can do this, you can use 3 methods to do this. Okay, there's 3 ways. Either the positive method, which is to say, like, if you take my advice, this is how it's going to be, and the future's going to be great because you're going to do what I say and the problem's going to be solved. You can take a negative approach. If you don't listen to me, it's going to get worse. Okay, negative. Or you could do both. Develop the negative picture first and then reveal what will happen if your ideas are accepted. So if you do both, all right, so if we don't do something about this cyberbullying, like more people are going to die, more kids are going to be depressed, it's all going to be terrible. But if you do take my advice, imagine what that future will be like. Now you're going to have to explain this, give an example, repeat it. So you've got to be thinking about that. How am I going to, make this happen? Don't go overboard, just get it done. Follow the directions, okay? So here's the thing, if you don't take my advice and do not speak to your children or those who look up to you about how to use the internet safely, imagine what can happen to them. But if you do take my advice, what difference can you make? So here she's gonna do both ways, okay? So in the explanation, not only can they be the ones doing the bullying, but they can also be receiving the bullying, fine. If you do take my advice, imagine how good your child will feel that he or she can trust someone to openly speak about what they may be going through if they're experiencing being bullied. By speaking to those who look up to you, it gives them a sense that you understand what they may be going through, which makes a person feel more comfortable to open up, etc. Repeat it. So now we see what can happen if you take my advice on teaching those younger than us about cyberbullying. Great. Counterclaim, the turn against. So counterclaim in a persuasive speech has 2 stages. You turn against your argument to challenge it, and then you turn back to reaffirm it. So you first imagine a listener who doesn't share your opinion, or you cite a real person who might resist your argument by pointing out a problem with your reasoning. Different conclusion could be drawn from the same facts, one or more disadvantages or practical drawbacks of what you propose, or an alternative proposal that makes more sense than yours. Phrase it as, some people might say, other people than me feel differently. You want to acknowledge those people, because what you might find is that even though they're thinking they don't agree with you, you might be able to convince them just by saying, hey, I see you, I hear you, but there's another way to think about this. Okay. Of course, there may be some people that think cyberbullying is not that serious because it happens all the time and kids will get over it. But turn back, defeat it. Defeat that idea. Tell us why they were wrong. You return to your own judgment, your own argument. This is called the turn back. You announce it with a but, yet, however, nevertheless, or still. It must likewise involve careful reasoning. In reasoning about your proposed counter-argument, you may show why it's not a real problem, acknowledge its validity, but suggest why it's less important than what you propose, agree to the opposing argument, and then restate your thesis in a more exact, qualified way that you think takes into account the objective. And you should phrase this as, but they're wrong, because some people might think, but they're wrong. Okay, 2 parts to a counterclaim. So here's the example. But those people, the cyberbullying people who think it's not a big deal, are wrong. Cyberbullying has been a major reason that many teens have committed suicide, and suicide is actually the number 2 cause of death in teenagers. Why should someone be the judge of making someone else feel like they are not worth living? Kids cannot just brush off their shoulders as much as adults can. They get deeply affected by what their peers say and will not be able to handle the stress as well. Okay? Conclusion. As we had in the informative speeches, the conclusion will still have 2 parts. The first part will be to repeat your points, so restate the problem and the solution. And if you can do it in 1 sentence, even better. So here's the example. So today I told you guys about how cyberbullying is a huge problem among teenagers and how we as adults must teach those younger than us how to use the internet responsibly. Raising awareness, remember? All right, and then at the end of the speech, we have something that's called a call to action. And this is the most difficult part of this. A problem, I can figure out a problem. A solution for the problem, I can figure that out. The future, what it's going to be like, well, you're inventing that, so be creative. A call to action has to be something real that you are going to tell us to do right now. Okay, think about a commercial selling those stupid weird copper pots that don't stick, you know? Buy now. Call this number. When you call the number, if you call in the next 2 minutes, you're going to get 2 pots for the price of one. Like all of that madness to make you think, I've got to do it. I've got to call. I've got to call. I'm getting such a deal, and it's only 2 payments of $19.95 or whatever the heck they're saying. All of that is to just get it in your head, like, I've got to do it. I got to do it. I got to do it right now. And that's what the call to action has to do. You have to help us. You've got to give us options. So if calling on the phone to get those copper pots isn't good enough, go to the website. Here's the website. Here's the address. Go there right now. If you're there in the next 5 minutes, you get 3 pots. Okay. Yeah. 2 options. I can call. I can go to the website. Here's the address. You can write to us. We'll send it to you in the mail. Send us a check. Fine, 3 options. Look at that. Get those pots, get those pots. They're even available in Walmart in that section of the store as seen on TV. But you only get one if you buy it in the store. All right, so however you're going to do it, you've got to have 2 or 3 options, all right? So we get some examples here. Adopt a new business process, sponsor an event, attend an event, fund a research initiative, register to vote, sign a petition, contact your legislature, all these kinds of things, stuff we can do right now. We're going to review this a little bit in the live session, but this is just a sort of introduction. So there's some steps to this, all right? It's got to be clear and direct. Don't hint, don't imply, don't suggest. It's not a whisper to think about something. It's a call to action. Do it now. Say it loud. Be proud. Use direct language and eliminate wishy-washy phrases. Instead of, maybe you could think about joining. Say, join, do it now. Instead of, it would be good for you to train, just say train, just tell them what to do, okay? The second part is we've got to act quickly. If we don't do it right now, it's not going to happen. When they tell you about the stupid copper pots, they tell you you have to call in the next 5 minutes because in 10 minutes you will have forgotten about the copper pots. So it has to be called right now. And if you do it right now, I'm going to give you 2 for the price of 1. You could call next year and they'll still give you 2 for the price of 1. That's the truth. But they want to create this sense of urgency, and you have to do that too, okay? If you've been persuasive, your audience is emotionally invested, the best time for action is now. An ideal call to action is one where your audience can act on it immediately, perhaps even before they leave the room. And that's the ideal thing to do. The third thing, you've got to lower barriers to action. So you want to help the people get it done. If there's something they need to sign up, then you need to bring the forms and pass them out, or you need to give us the website and tell us to take out our phones and go to that website right now. We have to do it now or it's not going to happen. If they need to read additional information, then you need to bring handouts, give copies of a book, give links, tell us where to go right now, help us do it. Do they need approval before they can act? Make the first call to action to organize the meeting with the stakeholders. So approval meaning like there's something I want to do, like we're having all the Black Lives Matter protests as I'm recording this video. And one of the constant things that people are asking for, their call to action, they're calling it that, right, is to abolish the police. Well, I'm just a citizen in the city. I can't decide myself to abolish the police. I need to get the city council to do it. I need to get the mayor to do it. I might need to get the governor to do it. It depends on what the hierarchy is, okay? So I need then to get, if I'm going to have to get approval, then I'm gonna need to get people together because my one voice is probably not enough. I'm going to have to organize the protest. I'm going to have to organize people writing letters, making calls, sending emails, so that then there's enough of us to get to that person. But I've got to organize that, you know. And then the last piece, do they need to pay? If people need to pay for something, then you want to have many different ways that they can pay. Pay by credit card, pay by check, pay by cash, whatever it's going to be. Okay. Step 4, focus on the benefit to listeners. So always frame your call to action in the audience's best interest. What I'd really like you to do, it would make me so happy if you could. My foundation has set a target and we need your help to reach it. Those kinds of things are problematic because it's about you. Please help me, help me, help me. Make it about them. Why it's important for them to do it. Build your financial wealth. Make your community a safer place. When you volunteer, you build your skills. It's about you. That is more likely to get people to act, okay? You should customize it for each listener. Now, ideally, You would customize it for every person who's listening. There's 25 people in this class. We cannot have 25 different calls to action. It will be too long. The speech is only 3 to 5 minutes. So my recommendation to you is 2 or 3 options. 2 or 3 options. You don't like this? Do this instead. Fine. Okay, here's the sample from the cyberbullying. So I want all of you to take out your phone and send a text message. Take it out right now, your phone. Send a text message to any kid you know. It could be your child, your younger sibling, or anyone who looks up to you, and ask them one thing. Have you ever been bullied on the internet or bullied somebody else? I guarantee you, you will be shocked at the responses you get. And if the answer is yes, then you teach them what I have taught you today, and that is to be aware of all the consequences associated with cyberbullying. One action, text the kids, okay? Here's the other option. Finally, for victims or bystanders, help is available. Take out your phones and go to stopbullying.gov. There you will find a link to get help now, providing phone numbers for the suicide prevention hotline, counseling and mental health services, and civil rights resources. We must act to end this now. Thank you. So we had 2 options there. Text the kids, contact them, find out if they're being bullied, raise awareness, do it now. Or if you were bullied and you need help, here's a website you can go to. And when you get there, here's what you're going to find. So don't just leave them like, I'm going to go to the website. What the hell happens there? Tell them what's there. So we've got phone numbers that you can call. We've got counseling. We've got mental health, all kinds of different things. Whatever you need, it's there. Go to that website and do it right now. So I went over the whole thing in the introduction. We've got 3 parts. We start with attention getter like we've been doing. Then you're going to have claim where you introduce the problem and the solution and address credibility like we've been doing. In main point 1, you've got to establish the need, tell us what the problem is, explain that problem, talk about the consequences of inaction, what's going to happen if we don't act, if we don't change this, you know, and then repeat that problem. Okay, so that's a little bit about that problem. Now, main point 2, establish or satisfy the need. We're going to talk about the solution. So state it. What's the solution? What should we do about this problem? Explain it, give an example, and repeat it. So that's what we should do, okay? Main point 3, visualize the future. So we can do it positively. What's going to happen if you take my advice? It's going to be great. Negatively, what's going to happen if you don't take my advice? It's going to be terrible, or a combination of the 2. If you don't take my advice, it'll be terrible. But if you do, it's going to be great, okay? Explain it, give an example, repeat it. Then we have this new thing, this counterclaim, where you're going to give the opposite view, the turn against. So some people think differently than me, and then you turn back to your idea. But my idea is better, and here's why. Okay, or those people are wrong, and I'm right. However you want to phrase it, okay? Then we have our conclusion. 2 parts. First, we're going to review the problem and solution, so review the claim, and then you're going to end with this new thing, call to action. What do you want us to do right now to take action? Give us 2 or 3 options to get it done, and also help us to achieve it. All right, and that's the whole speech. That's the whole speech. All right, introduction, main point 1, main point 2, main point 3. Counterclaim. Now, one thing I didn't mention about counterclaim is that it can happen anywhere in the speech. I have to put it somewhere on the outline and in the rubric when I'm grading it, so it just happens to come after main point 3, but you don't have to do it there. You could do the counterclaim as your, well, you could as your attention getter. You can do it at the beginning of the speech. You could do it in the middle of one of your main points, wherever you want it. Most people will do it after main point 3 because that's just the way that I've listed it, but you can do it wherever you want as long as it's very clear. Some people think this, but they are wrong because, okay, both of those parts, the turn against and the turn back. The conclusion's got to have a review of the claim, and you've got to have a call to action, and you're doing this in 3 to 5 minutes, and that is speech number 4, okay? 7.5 points on your grade. This is like our practice version where we're figuring out the persuasive structure of this Monroe's motivated sequence and getting an understanding of that. And then we're going to do a bigger version of it for speech 5. But the structure will be as I've described it here. Okay, so let's look at a sample. In this video that we're going to watch, there is a young woman who is speaking about an organization that is very dear to me personally called the Special Olympics. And so while you're watching the video, I want you to be thinking about like all these new pieces, this Monroe's motivated sequence, what's going on here. So what's her claim? What is the problem? What is the solution? Does she visualize the future? Does she address the counterclaim? How does she do that? How does she tell us that some people think like, oh, I can't do this? But here's how you can do it. How does she do that? okay? And then at the end of the speech, she's supposed to have a call to action. So does she give us options? Are they things we can do right now in the room? Does she help us achieve them? That's what we've got to know. And then the last question, what's effective about it? What makes it work? Okay, or does it? Maybe it doesn't work. And we can think about that too. Enjoy.
In Seattle, 9 young athletes gathered at the starting line of the 100-yard dash. At the gun, they all started off, not exactly in a dash, but with the desire to run the race to the finish and win. All except one little boy, who stumbled on the asphalt, tumbled over a couple of times, and began to cry. The other runners heard the boy's cry. They stopped. They looked back. Then they all went back to the boy's side. Every single one of them. One girl with Down syndrome kissed him and said, "This will make it better." Then all 9 linked arms and walked to the finish line, together. These athletes were not competing on national television. They were not sponsored or idolized, but they were given the opportunity to flourish under the glow of their own spotlight, to feel the brush of the ribbon cross their chests as they ran through their own finish line in their own Olympics, the Special Olympics. Founded in 1968, Special Olympics invited the world to let go of limiting views, unyielding prejudices, and ignorant misconceptions about people with cognitive disabilities, and to embrace the idea that they can be respected, valued, contributing members of society. Just think, one of the kids who ran through that finish line could have fallen into your arms, or maybe one day could be your own child. After working as a volunteer for the Special Olympics and doing additional research for this speech, I'd like to encourage you to become involved as a volunteer for the Special Olympics. We'll start by looking at the need for volunteers. According to the Special Olympics website, more than 1.3 million people participate in the Special Olympics around the world. Participants must be at least 8 years old and be identified as having a cognitive or intellectual disability. There are currently 200 Special Olympics programs running in over 150 countries. So as Special Olympics continues to grow, so does the need for volunteers. Here in Wisconsin, there are 10,000 athletes and 3,500 volunteer coaches. But because of all the individual attention required by Special Olympics athletes, there's always a need for more volunteer coaches, or for loads of other volunteers as well. Now you know the need for Special Olympics volunteers, so the question is, what can you do to help? The answer is, become a volunteer. The most obvious way to become a volunteer is to become a coach. Now you don't have to be a great athlete, you don't have to have any prior coaching experience. Special Olympics offers a general course on the principles of coaching in addition to a mentoring program in which the new coaches receive guidance from the experienced coaches. And if you don't want to be a coach, there's other ways to help out as well. You can work behind the scenes by assisting in fundraising or organizing events or any of the other countless details involved in running a huge organization such as Special Olympics. It's also very important that you know that your contribution to Special Olympics can last from a day to a year to a lifetime, depending on the level of commitment that you're ready to make. No matter how you decide to help, I guarantee you that working with the Special Olympics will be immensely rewarding. As a coach, your instruction and support will help your athletes develop physical skills, while your interaction and friendship will help them develop socially. Rana Vanderslice, author of the article Special Olympics, Beneficial to All, reports that individuals who get involved in sports and recreation through Special Olympics develop larger networks of friends, are more likely to socialize with others, and receive more social support. But it's not just the athletes who benefit from Special Olympics. In my case, working with Special Olympics is one of the most gratifying things I have ever done in my life. Because not only do I have the satisfaction that comes from helping others improve the quality of their lives, but I've met so many amazing people and met so many great friends that really I would not trade the experience for anything. Now you know the need for Special Olympics volunteers, some ways that you can help out, and the benefits for the volunteers and athletes alike. So now I'd like to ask you to take the step of getting involved with the Special Olympics. If you want more information, you can check out the website for the Special Olympics or visit the local headquarters located on Monona Drive here in Madison. I also have brochures with contact information that I'll be handing out after the speech. I know that you may not have a lot of time available right now, but you can volunteer for the time that fits your schedule. The most important thing is to get involved in some capacity for whatever amount of time that you can manage. Remember the 9 children I mentioned at the beginning of this speech. Think of their happiness and their support for one another. Think of how much they gained from running in that race. And think of how you can help others experience the same benefits as they strive to fulfill the motto of the Special Olympics. Let me win, but if I can't win, let me be brave in the attempt.
All right, folks, so you've watched this video on Special Olympics. Was there a problem? There was a problem. Did she have a solution for that problem? You bet she did. Did she visualize the future? And counterclaim, was it defeated? And what was her call to action? So we've got our structure here listed again, so we just are reminded about what it is that we're looking towards. So there are, in fact, 19 things that you need to do in the outline, 19 different pieces to the speech. And then the 2 other things that we're looking for is eye contact, and then it has to be 3 to 5 minutes. I'm not sure, because when I watched this video, it's set up like as if there's an audience, but something about it seems very staged. So whatever she's doing, she's looking at people. Okay. And 3 to 5 minutes, it's around there. I think it might be a little bit longer than that. But in any case, let's see what she did. Okay. Introduction, attention getter, claim, and credibility. So her claim, become a volunteer. We need people. Now, the only problem with that is that we need to hear about the problem and the solution. So become a volunteer. There are not enough volunteers. We need volunteers. She talks about that in main point 1, but she doesn't talk about it in the introduction. So for the claim, remember, problem and solution. There are not enough volunteers, and we need you to consider becoming one. That would be a better way for her to state that, to be fully a claim in a persuasive speech. The last thing she has to do there, of course, is to address credibility. And she says after volunteering herself and doing research, blah, 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 which is fine. Main point 1. So we've got to establish the need here, tell about the problem. And as I said, she talks about the lack of volunteers. She talks about the size of the organization, that there's millions of people who participate in all of that. So that is really giving us the scope of the problem. Consequences of inaction, what's going to happen if we don't do something about this lack of volunteers? We can't hold the event. It's not going to work if we don't have more people. And I said it was near and dear to my heart. My brother has participated in the Special Olympics for many decades at this point. And on a number of occasions, he and his teammates have been preparing to go and to compete. And then the event's been canceled because they didn't have enough coaches or they didn't have enough volunteers, and then they can't do it, which is terrible if you've spent all this time preparing for something and then it doesn't happen, right? So that's a terrible consequence, and we need to do something about it. And in this case, it is we need more volunteers, yeah? So in terms of solving that, she tells people that they should become a volunteer or become a coach. She talks about the need to fundraise and organize. So if like working with the people is not your thing, then fundraising and organizing is another way that you can help to get this problem fixed. In main point 3, she's got to visualize the future, and she talked about it in a very specific way. She talked about the benefits of volunteering and the benefits for the athletes participating, to sort of remind us that like if we're doing this, if we volunteer and help support this organization, these are the great things that happen as a result of that, which is fine. Okay. Counterclaim, turn against. She said, I know that you may not have a lot of time available right now. Fine. Some people might think they don't have enough time, but turn back, you can volunteer for the time that fits your schedule. Okay, so she's making it very clear, like you might not think this is something you can do, but here's how you can. And that's perfectly fine. Conclusion, she's got to review the claim and she's got to have a call to action, okay? So in reviewing the claim, she said, now you know the need, ways to help, and the benefits, the need for volunteers, the ways that you can help, and what the benefits are going to be, what the future is, all of that in one sentence. Perfect review of the claim, Okay, now her call to action. She said, if you want more information, you can check out the website for the Special Olympics. Fine, that's an option. That's something that we can do. But you need to help us. What the heck is the website? We don't know. She doesn't have a visual aid. We don't see it. So you've got to tell us what the website is. Help us. When we get there, where are we gonna go? Where's the information at on the website? Help us. Show us in the visual aid. Help us. Help us. All right, the next thing. Or visit the local headquarters located on Monona Drive here in Madison. So this is Madison, Wisconsin. Presumably this is the University of Wisconsin where she's giving this speech. Monona Drive, apparently the people she's talking to know where that is and what that is. So it's okay. But for, you know, if we're here in the city, we could be in different parts of the city, different boroughs. So help us out. Okay, and then the last, I also have brochures with contact information that I will be handing out after the speech. Now, that's not going to work when we're presenting on video, but if you were in person, it would work. So having, you know, stuff that you can hand out is perfectly fine. 3 options. We need the website, but other than that, she's pretty good. Okay, she gave the call to action before the counterclaim and reviewing the claim, and then she tacked on a power punch at the end. It's not necessarily a problem to get everything out of order. The only problem is that we might miss it. We might miss it. We're expecting it in a certain order. The counterclaim can happen where you like. Remember, I told you that. But when you get to the conclusion, you've got to review the claim, have the call to action, and that's the end. We do not need power punch anymore. She gives the quote of the Special Olympics. I mean, yeah, don't need it. Okay? And that's it. That's the speech. Okay? But we're going to watch another example. And in this other one, I should warn you, I think before we watch it, it's about the dangers of using cell phones. And some people have found this a little startling because they weren't aware that using cell phones is dangerous. And not just because if you're talking on the phone and crossing the street, you might not see a car or hear it coming. But there are other concerns, and that is what this speech is about, okay? As you watch it, like we did before, you're looking to see what's the claim, what's the problem, what's the solution, what's the future going to be like, does she address counterclaim and defeat it, and what's her call to action, and how does it work? Is it good? Enjoy.
It's your constant companion. It's in your pocket, in your bag, in your hands, or against your head. You use it at home, in class, at the gym, before you go to sleep at night, and first thing when you wake up in the morning. I'm talking, of course, about your cell phone. According to my class survey, everyone in this room has a cell phone, and all of us use it dozens of times every day. But what if your constant companion is dangerous? What if it's hazardous to your health? Evidence is piling up that long-term use of cell phones can lead to tissue damage, tumors, and even brain cancer. Given that there are well over 4 billion people worldwide using cell phones, we're looking at a problem of potentially staggering magnitude. According to Devra Davis, epidemiologist and author of the 2010 book Disconnect: The Truth About Cell Phone Radiation, we may be watching an epidemic in slow motion. I'd never thought much about the possible perils of cell phones before I saw a CBS News report on the subject earlier this year. But doing extensive research for this speech made me realize that cell phones do in fact pose a danger to our health. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to try to persuade you to abandon your constant companion. I still use mine on a regular basis, and I probably always will. But I do hope to persuade you to make one simple change in the way you use your cell phone. A change that will protect your health and could even make the difference between a long life and premature death. But first, let's look more closely at the health risks posed by cell phones. Those risks stem from the fact that cell phones emit small amounts of radiation that over time can damage tissue. Every time you use your cell phone, you expose yourself to that radiation. The amount is minuscule in comparison to that given off by X-ray machines, about 1/1 billionth of the intensity. However, Ronald Herbermann of the University of Pittsburgh Cancer Institute explains that the problem with cell phone radiation is not how much is emitted at a single time, but how much we are exposed to with repeated use, day after day, year after year. It's this long-term use of cell phones that has led researchers to warn about their danger. In one study, for example, the World Health Organization tracked 10,000 cell phone users over the course of 10 years. As reported in the New York Times on November 13, 2010, the data in this study indicated that subjects who used a cell phone 10 or more years doubled the risk of developing brain tumors. Other studies have reached the same conclusion. Perhaps most important is a 2007 study in the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine that surveyed all the previous research on cell phone use. It found a consistent pattern of increased risk for developing brain tumors among people who used cell phones for more than 10 years. Alan Marks is one of those people. A 58-year-old real estate developer and father of 3. He talked on his cell phone an hour a day for 23 years. 2 years ago, doctors found a golf ball-sized tumor in his brain. There's no question what caused it, he says. It was my cell phone. And Alan Marks isn't the only person to conclude that he's sick because of his cell phone. Ann Gittleman's 2010 book, Zapped, which deals at length with the health problems of cell phones, catalogs people who developed blinding headaches, dizziness, circulatory problems, nausea, and cancer from the kind of radiation emitted by cell phones. Still not convinced about the potential dangers posed by your constant companion? Take a look then inside the thick manual that comes with your phone. You'll see that all cell phone manufacturers warn against keeping the phone right next to your body. Apple, for example, recommends keeping the iPhone 5/8 of an inch away from your body. Makers of the BlackBerry recommend that you keep their phone a full inch away. Cell phone manufacturers don't publicize this information widely, but they clearly recognize that their products are potentially hazardous. So, what's the solution? As I said earlier, it's not to stop using cell phones altogether. I still use mine on a regular basis, and I can't imagine being without it, and I'm sure you can't imagine being without yours. You can, however, take seriously the risks of cell phones and find a way to minimize those risks. Time and again, experts point out that the single most effective way to reduce the risk is not to press your cell phone against your head while using it. Since the phone emits radiation, the closer you put it to your head, the more radiation you expose yourself to. At the very least, you should hold the phone 1/2 an inch to 1 full inch away from your ear, but ideally you should get in the habit of not putting it up to your head at all. I now use my earbuds almost every time I use my phone. Another option is to use your speakerphone. As with breaking any habit, changing the way you talk on your cell phone may be slightly inconvenient at first, but will soon become second nature. You'll be able to enjoy all the benefits of your constant companion without suffering the fate of Alan Marks. If Marks had known the dangers of prolonged cell phone use, he would have done things a lot differently. I wouldn't have held it to my head, he says. I would have used the headset, I would have used the speakerphone, and I would not have had the problems I had. So, please get in the habit of keeping your cell phone away from your ear when talking, and encourage your friends and family to do the same. Start today with your next phone call and continue every day in the future. We can avoid the slow motion epidemic that doctors and scientists are warning us about, as long as we remember to keep this away from this.
All right, folks, so our last sample in preparation for speech number 4. Dangers of cell phones. How did it go? All right, what was her claim? What was the solution that she proposed? How did she visualize the future? Did she address counterclaim? Did she defeat it? Okay, and then of course, what was the call to action? So we've got our structure. We know what the order is of things. Okay, so let's break it down. Her claim. What if your constant companion is dangerous? What if it's hazardous to your health? We want problem and solution. So be careful. Here she's really just telling us the problem. The phone is a problem. What if it's hazardous to your health? Well, what do you want us to do about it? Unclear. So for the claim, just be a little bit more full, I think is the word I want to use. Make sure that you state the problem and the solution there, okay? Now, going on. In her introduction, she's going to address credibility. She's supposed to, and she does. She just does it late. So it's okay. When you're giving the speech, sometimes you might forget things. Just remind yourself and get it in. And she did that. She said, doing extensive research for the speech made me realize that cell phones do, in fact, pose a danger to our health, which is fine. All right, main points. First thing, problem. What's the problem? Evidence is piling up that long-term use of cell phones can lead to tissue damage, tumors, and even brain cancer. Obviously, this is a big problem, okay? Radiation from phones. This is what it's doing inside our heads. So consequences of that, if we don't do something about that, we may be watching an epidemic in slow motion, because it's not like I use my phone today, I get cancer tomorrow. It takes time for it to develop, is what she's stressing here. And so there's other health risks that are posed, and this is a problem, all right? The next main point, she's got to talk about the solution. So what are we going to do about this? She tells us that the manufacturer recommendations are in the user manual. Keep it away from the body, at least a foot away, I think she says, or 8 inches, whatever it is. Use earbuds, use speakerphone, these kinds of things. Simple things that we can all do that are going to help to protect our health. Okay, visualize the future. What's it going to be like if we take her advice? Okay, she repeats her counterclaim, and then she finds ways to minimize the risk. So I'm going to address this in counterclaim because she talked about it earlier in the speech, but then she talked about ways to minimize the risk, and I'm going to get to that. Now, counterclaim, here's the deal. She did this before main point 2, so the counterclaim came early, which is fine. Totally fine, because you can do the counterclaim wherever you want, but that's why I said she repeated the counterclaim in main point 3, because she did, which is okay. You can do it twice if you need to. But in any case, the turn against. So she said, now don't worry, I'm not going to persuade you to abandon your constant companion, because remember, she introduced it that way in the introduction, that her phone was her constant companion. But okay, let's defeat that. I still use mine on a regular basis, and I probably always will, but I do hope to persuade you to make one simple change in the way you use your cell phone, a change that will protect your health and could even make the difference between a long life and premature death. Go ahead, girl. All right, in her conclusion, she's got to review the claim and the call to action. So she's supposed to review the claim. Doesn't happen. She didn't do it. So, of course, cell phones are dangerous. I've identified all the dangers that are associated with it, and I've given you some suggestions for what you can do to help mitigate those dangers, okay? Call to action. What do I want you to do right now? Please get in the habit of keeping your cell phone away from your ear when talking. How? How do we get in that habit? Help us. Help us do it. And let's do it right now, okay? Take out a ruler and show us what the distance is. This is where the phone has to be, all the way over here, Help us. All right. The second thing, encourage your friends and family to do the same. Remember in the cyberbullying, she told us to text the people and text them right now. You could do that too. So when, how, encourage your friends and family to do the same. Oh, right. Help us. Let's get it done. And then the last thing, start today with your next call and continue every day in the future. We can avoid the slow motion epidemic that doctors and scientists are warning us about as long as we remember to keep this phone away from your head, okay? So that is the end of her speech. Now, she stated the counterclaim twice, not a big deal, like I said, but just don't forget to review the claim before the call to action, and you're gonna be good, okay? Because that's the whole speech. So we'll do some work to figure out what our topics are going to be, what the problem in our daily lives that we want to fix in this speech, and we're going to start working on the outline. So I look forward to seeing what you do with the outline, and then we're going to talk about them and have an opportunity to practice our speeches in the live session. So I will see you then. Bye-bye.